Imagine I handed you this Game Boy SP. I think one of the greatest handhelds of all time. You opened it up, you flipped it on, and you heard the chime. What does that do for you? How does that make you feel? I mean, for me, it brings me back to a time that was much simpler. It brings me back to a time where video games were just so special. You would get that one game and you would play it to death because game releases weren't coming out every 2 months. You'd be excited because the completion of that game was so amazing, right? It'd be incredible. Imagine for a second that I said, hey, I got something for you to hold. And I gave you this. I said, hey, hold on to this. This Super Nintendo controller. What would happen? You'd grab it, put your hands precisely where they're supposed to be, index fingers on the shoulder buttons. You'd feel the indentation, the concave Y and X, the convex A and B, the slanted start stop, and the D-pad that left marks in your thumbs. This slightly slanted controller, the feel in your hands, transports you to a special time, a simpler time, a beautiful time in gaming. Oh, wait, I have another one. And before we get to that, I need to start making my cup of coffee here. I have been playing through Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door this weekend, and it really had me thinking a lot about my gaming over these past few years. And what I have liked, what I have disliked, what I've grown to enjoy more. And it's been a really fascinating past, I would say, past few years, but more specifically, these past 6 months have been, I think, wildly different. Primarily because I now have a second kid, and so my time is very much so limited. So I'm finding myself gravitating more towards things that I find to be more familiar, which I don't think is wrong. And speaking of that familiarity, like, I got this recently. What would happen if I handed you a Nintendo 64? And I said, plug in the controller. Let's get it all set up. Let's get it all ready to go. You'd plug in the controller, you'd feel the buttons, and you would place your hands precisely in the only correct space, and you would immediately be transported. You take that cart, you'd slam it into the machine itself, and turn on the Nintendo 64, and you're ready to go. Just primed. D-pad, unusable in a lot of ways, but you have this system. I bring these all up as examples, not in anything more than just the excitement that comes with some of these more retro consoles, so to speak. I mean, if we look back in gaming, just 10 years, we didn't have the gaming we have today. Now, that makes obvious sense. Time and the progression of time changes things with technological advancements. But if we look back just 10 years, we had a very different landscape as a whole. We had just the traditional PlayStation, Xbox, and, well, Nintendo was on the Wii U. Not really the best console for them. As well as the Wii U, Nintendo also had what I find to be one of my favorite handhelds created, second to the Game Boy Advance SP, of course, the 3DS. I had the 3DS XL. A gaming system that I had a tremendous amount of fun with, and I still use to this day. In fact, going through going through Majora's Mask. Gaming as a whole in these past, well, honestly, I would say these past 2 to 3 years has changed exponentially, but specifically in these past 7 years with the Nintendo Switch has been transformed and I would say redefined. The introduction of a hybrid style gaming device like the Nintendo Switch was at the time something that we didn't know we necessarily wanted, but at this point a lot of us would go on record saying we now require. In fact, I would argue that it is so much of a requirement that not only are PC and computer manufacturers going through it with Asus, Lenovo, and MSI, but we're seeing a optimization, so to speak, of these devices to be more and more capable as well as accessible to the masses. One of the greatest handheld PCs out there being the Steam Deck, something that I believe has really transformed gaming in a lot of ways single-handedly, as well as completely influenced and transformed the way that I look at gaming. The handheld gaming market as a whole is something that I find to be so unbelievably exciting, but that's another topic for another day. For me, the thought of this handheld gaming thing has really been something on my mind a lot, because I do it everywhere. In my house, I'm always using some sort of device, but I'm realizing that majority of my gaming is handheld, and on purpose. I have 3 devices I use in tandem. That's a Steam Deck, a Nintendo Switch OLED, and some sort of emulation device, currently the Anbernic RG35XX Plus, but soon to be the RG35XX SP. It should be here in the next week or so. And yes, we'll be talking at length about it. Those devices in tandem grant me access to all the games that I find myself playing, but then we enter into a conversation about capability. The Steam Deck isn't the most powerful device out there. Understood. The Nintendo Switch is laughably the least powerful handheld device we have right now. And an emulation device is very, very specific in its use case, and we're not going to find that to be absurdly powerful in its own right, because after all, it's just an Android device when you break it down. But these devices do a few things really well. They are able to play moderately advanced games. I would say nothing too crazy. The Steam Deck is able to do a lot, but for me, they play the games that I find myself gravitating towards. Those games being remasters and retro, remakes, stuff of that nature. Gaming right now is in a weird spot. We have beautiful masterpieces like the Hellblade something saga that is like playing a movie. The most incredible, gorgeous game that people are talking about. We have games like Elden Ring, which is phenomenally beautiful as well, with character design and just a insane story arc and stuff like that seems to be really popular. We have games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which again, beautiful game. But for me, I find myself, and I use the last one on purpose, gravitating towards remakes and remasters as well as retro games. I mean, one of the biggest releases that I am excited about this year is actually just a release that I already own, twice over, mind you. I own all of my Kingdom Hearts games, and it's the only series that I've purchased on Xbox. I don't have an Xbox, but I own them all on my PlayStation. I'm purchasing them again on Steam, and I cannot wait for that because I'm so excited to play it in, you guessed it, handheld fashion. I find myself gravitating towards these retro, remake, remasters, all individual, not combined, because they bring me a sense of excitement, so to speak. Holy cow, that's good. That's delicious. I've been so unbelievably tickled by my experience with Mario and the Thousand Year Door, Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, because that game is just an extremely beautiful remaster or remake, whatever you want to call it. I am having so much fun playing through some of these titles remastered. I mean, one of my favorite remasters out there is Link's Awakening, and that game got me from start to finish in such a way. I mean, yes, it was a full-priced game, and it wasn't all that long, and it was just a like-for-like remaster with a couple things with Dompe, but seriously, that game blew my mind and blew my socks off because it was so much fun to play. And I, maybe you as well, have been playing games for such a long time. Again, I started this by saying, what happens if I hand you something? What happens if I was to hand you an NES controller, the super uncomfortable NES controller, and you went to play some of your favorite games on the NES? Transport you back in time. These things exist in this space, and this retro feel and this looking back exist in such a way for me that they bring me immense amount of joy. Currently playing Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door here on the Nintendo Switch, I'm using the Nixie Wizards, I think they're called. I'm not too sure exactly. And this isn't a review, neither a review nor a sponsorship, but I chose specifically to put GameCube Joy-Cons on my Nintendo Switch, one of 2 that I own. I also own the Doyoki ones, which look a little bit better, but the button feel of this is far greater to me than the button feel of the Dyokis, two of which I haven't purchased. And when I'm docked at the TV, I am using Hori's controller that is modeled after, again, the GameCube. I find it to be an extremely fun experience to do this, but what it's granting me is this sense of nostalgia in some ways, even though I didn't play Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door originally on the GameCube. I am playing through this game and I'm really enjoying it. And what happens with this remake/remaster idea is a lot of people seem to be like, oh, they're just remastering another game. They're not coming out with anything new. But I would like to challenge that a little bit. I don't mind new games. They're fine. Again, I've played some new games. Final Fantasy XVI being a game that is new, very much new, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. Not a Spider-Man fan, so that game didn't really do it much for me. And Starfield, Redfall, and Hellblade Someone Saga. Those 3 games, sorry Xbox, but none of those interest me at all. I see myself playing, again, a lot of Nintendo titles, but these remasters of games in the lights, in the 2024 lens, with better graphics, frames, and excitement. Now, some would argue that the frame rate of Thousand Year Door is annoying, being 30, but I personally would not have been able to tell you that their 30 frames per second was slowing down my experience. Again, I'm having such a great time playing Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, and I think it's because of the simplicity of it. I think it's because they took the mechanics of a game that was otherwise perfect in a lot of ways for those of you who are into the turn-based RPG styles of, Super Mario RPG, which again, a remaster that I had a blast playing, or Paper Mario, the original one that you can replay on the N64 expansion pack thing, which, mind you, highly recommend using the N64 controller, because why not enjoy a hiccup in time, I would say, with a controller that is so iconic and uncomfortable, but also absolutely necessary to experience some element of nostalgic explosion. But if you're into that sort of thing, you don't have an autosave feature that you would have otherwise. You actually have to find a save point. You don't have waypoints that you have in modern day games. You actually have to refer back to one of your party characters to tell you where to go. You have to explore different areas without any sort of direction or wind guiding golden dust into the next area you have to go. A snapshot in time of game creation that lets you explore with your imagination. Now, Paper Mario isn't wildly open world and complicated, so looking around isn't all that tough, but still, the game reminds me of a time where gaming was yours. You weren't told what to do, you were asked what you discovered. And for me, that's what gaming has always been about. It's always been about the discovery, the excitement, the adventure. And that's primarily because I am a single-player, narrative-based gaming enthusiast. I like single-player games. That's where I go. I'm not saying that games that come out in 2024 new aren't good. I'm not. But what I am saying is maybe, just maybe, this fascination with retro and remaster is because we as gamers actually like a style that is not being made as often anymore. At least in the AAA space. Indies, they're their own cup of coffee, and I personally am just learning more about different titles in the indie space because I am new to looking into places, little nooks and crannies in gaming, because when it comes to Nintendo Switch and PlayStation, my upbringing in gaming, I've always just stuck to mainline franchises and never really ventured into the indie space, and that's just the way it was for me. I don't know if gaming someone who's in their mid-30s with kids, I don't know if playing a game where every single point of the game is marked on a map with a compass and you don't have to explore. I don't know if that's something for me. I don't know if quest lines and quest stories going to the next point and discovering or not discovering and just going to wherever it tells you to go is, for me, I mean, I find that to be just as simple as far as the trajectory of a game as something like the newest release of Hellblade, when you have a character that is basically just moving forward, and the cinematics and the complexity that exists there, as well as the gameplay, is pretty handheld because you're supposed to go in a specific direction. And so you're allowed to have these, or you're able to capture these insane cinematics because there's not much deviation from the track. I mean, what would stop you from just doing some sort of auto run and just going to the next quest line? Sure, grinding in between the two, but the discovery alone is tough. I mean, modern day games, some of the discovery that exists there is more of just find that extra hidden item in the bushes. Which, again, for some, that's enough discovery for them. But for me, it was always how I got there that I had loved. I mean, I love a good, easy point A to point B, here's how you go. I mean, again, Final Fantasy 16, they handheld the crap out of you through that game. There was very, very little discovery on your own. Sure, you could explore different nooks and crannies of open world areas. Not open world, but open area, but it wasn't all that complicated. You knew where you were supposed to go. I'm currently going through Kakarot on my Steam Deck, and that game just tells you exactly where to go. In fact, it's very, very easy to find where you go next. Maybe this is just a open world game thing, and I'm not a huge open world fan in general, but I'm noticing that I find myself excited and entranced by games like Paper Mario and the Thousand Year Door, a game that is re-released, a like-for-like re-release at $60 on a Nintendo Switch at the end of its life cycle. This thing is on its last leg, so to speak. There is not much time left with the Nintendo Switch. It's not going to stand up on its own. It is so close to the end, and I am still purchasing brand new titles for this device. A game that I didn't think I was going to get, and I'm so glad I did. Because the joy that comes from playing a game like this in the simplest fashion, of course, I am really, really enjoying using these Joy-Cons quite a bit, and I've reached out to them to see if they want to do any sort of partnership, and if they do, great. If they don't, whatever. It's just been a real blast. And so I look at this handheld gaming thing, and I'm like, well, what does the handheld gaming have to do with it? And I realized something. I realized something really special, actually. I realized the reason why handheld gaming for me is so exciting, or just such a beautiful thing, is not because the access I have at games when I'm playing video games, because I can play video games easily now anywhere in my house with my kids running around or my wife, watching TV or something. We can just do this together. But rather, it's because the games that I want to play are able to be played at the maximum level because they aren't the most demanding games in general. But they're allowing me to play the very games I wanted to when I was a kid, anywhere, which is something I wanted so much as a kid. Again, PC gaming for me is new. And I don't think that PC gaming is something that I will ever fully say, this is my life, PC gaming, sit at my desk, click, click, boom. I don't think that's my thing as much. While I will eventually have a gaming PC, the thought of being fixed in one position forever to play my games just isn't enticing. Stuff like this, anywhere I want to go, the PlayStation Portal or the Steam Deck, that's really where my excitement comes. I mean, and honestly, something like the RG35XX Plus is just a phenomenal little piece of hardware. But what it comes down to is this time period where everyone's complaining. Well, let me rephrase this time period where people are complaining that they can't come up with anything new, and they're just charging full price for remakes and remasters and milking franchises. I want to go on record saying, keep doing it. Keep milking franchises. I love it. I love it. I am having the time of my life right now. I could be playing some of the most beautiful insanely graphic intensive, visually stunning on paper games ever for 5 hours. But I'm choosing to play a remake of a GameCube game on a dying console with inconveniently sized Joy-Cons that are absurd and make a otherwise portable device extremely impractical. And I can't stop smiling. This is what gaming's all about. This is the special thing, and I do not think that this has anything to do with me being a dad or me being in this space. I think it just simply has to do with the simplicity of it all, and maybe, just maybe, the complexity and the live service, battle pass, ongoing this, skins here, upgrades, DLC, long-term game plan, game pass, PlayStation Plus, subscription service, complexity throughout the whole gaming industry has been so unbelievably overwhelming that the thought of playing a game that was released in 2004 with visuals that are just clean. The game wasn't overly complicated in 2004. It looked very similar, if I'm being honest with you. All they did was clean it up. The QOL stuff or quality of life stuff isn't even there. There's no autosave. It saves with a save block. If you don't hit the save block, I mean, you don't have to keep it on. You can just, hit the power button, which helps. That's kind of like its own save feature. But still, this is old hardware and an old game. And it is so much better, objectively, to me. So I guess that's subjective, than anything that's come out so far this year. I guess Remake or Rebirth for me, I would say, is one of the good ones too. But Rebirth is a remake. Not a remaster, but a remake. Remakes, remaster, and retro, for me, is where it's at. Replaying Pokemon, playing a remastered Paper Mario, and playing through a remade Final Fantasy game, and counting the minutes to play through my beloved Kingdom Hearts series anywhere in my home. It's just so unbelievably exciting. I don't know if you're into this sort of thing too. And also, I just want to talk about for a second how this coffee show that I have been doing for the past 100 and almost 30 cups. I watched Wayne's World with my wife last night, and I'm obsessed with anything from that time period between the 90s and 2000s. I look at this and I go like, oh man, this is like my version of Wayne's World. I hope to have a co-host eventually at some point, but this is exciting. I was gonna make this crazy review of this controller with all this stuff, and I'm like, nah man, this is it. This is like the coffee show, caffeine and consoles, dude. Like we just chat and spit and just do this kind of thing. This is great. This is so fun. So this is a lot of fun. Live streams will be happening. Hop in Discord, grab a shirt, some merch, whatever. All right, so I guess that's gonna do it for today. I want to get this edited so I can get to playing some more Paper Mario. All right, guys, have a good one. Happy gaming.